Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Casey Turner Presents Talk to Me. I am so excited today to have Dan Bern reporting from the Santa Cruz, California area. Hey Dan, good to see you.
Good to see you, Casey.
And thank you all so much for tuning in. Help us get as many people watching as possible. Please share this, start a watch party, and also comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. It's always fun to go back and see where everyone's tuning in from. Now, if you've seen past episodes of Talk to Me, you'll notice that my background is very different. I'm usually at my home in San Francisco that has all the little posters and stuff. And right now, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is totally random, but it's a place I wanted to get out of town for with my lady, and we just had to get some mountain air. So we're here right now, and we're making it work. So the podcast is on the road. But also below, you can find some links that go to danbern.com and buy his merchandise. He's got a lot of records and merch for sale, so check that out. And also there's a place there you can tip him if you want to donate. And also there's a couple links there if you want to support this podcast, because right now we ain't doing those shows, and we really aren't making no doughs. So that's kind of how it is. But without further ado, welcome Dan Bern. It's so good to see you.
Well, you too. What's that instrument in the background? It looks like a banjo.
It's a guitar. It's a guitar. I propped it up to make it look a little less white wall behind me. It has a capo. It's got a capo on it.
Oh, it's got a capo on it. I thought you were hauling a banjo around wherever you went.
Yeah, and I think that's a picture of Utah behind me, but honestly, I have no idea. I would assume it is. It's an Airbnb, so I'm not for sure.
Who's the face?
Oh, that's I got on the road. It's Jack Kerouac. I don't know what. I guess the drawing would be Dean from On the Road.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
assuming that's who he would have put on the cover. Yeah, so it feels just like home here. Man, I remember. So I feel like I've known you and worked with you for a million years, but it's actually only been. I did some research. I was like, we met at Folk Alliance in Kansas
Sure did.
City.
With Jordan
2000
Katz.
That's right, Jordan Katz, and our mutual friend David Berkeley introduced us. David is a good friend of mine, and he goes, "You got to meet Dan Bern. You got to meet Dan Bern." And I'm like, "I've heard of Dan Bern for years, but I've never met him." And you guys had just got done playing tennis, and we met, I think, at the Panera Bread.
Yeah, that was a good little sit down.
Terrible food, but a good sit down.
Do you know you know Dave Margulies?
Of course, yeah, High Sierra Music Fest.
I think we had been playing tennis with him just before that.
And that's before I knew a lot about like the deep Dan Bern cuts and your love for sports like tennis, and that you've not only played tennis but you've got numerous paintings and songs about tennis, which I don't know anyone else personally who does, which is pretty cool. But then I'm super happy we met, because since then we've done a bunch of great shows, house concerts and hot monk shows, and then the amazing rivalry show we did at Bazaar Cafe, where you played a bunch of songs about the San Francisco Giants and Dodgers rivalry.
Right.
That was one of the most fun times, and you had a painting of like all the star players from both ball clubs, and I don't know, it's pretty great. but I'm happy to know you, and but how. I guess we'll start like this, quarantine. How are you holding up? I've been seeing a lot of your online shows, and you've been staying busier, I think, than any other artist in the world.
Well, I don't know about that. I know a guy in Italy, my friend Lorenzo, who did 100 straight days. He just finished 100 straight days. So, but yeah, I've been doing a lot of them, and some of them are real long, and I've done a lot of themes. I did the tennis one. I did the baseball one. But did one of Numbers. Did one of New York. Just did a bunch of redemption songs and rebellion and change and hope. There's you're just trying to keep up with what's inside and all around.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to fill that void of being in front of a live audience. But we were kind of chatting before we hopped on here about that, the difference between like performing in front of a camera and performing in front of at least a live audience that is engaging with you during that. Do you feel like that's feeling some of that that live show void at all for you? Are you is it that part of your
Oh
brain getting
yeah,
stimulated?
very much. I mean, very much. There's things you pick up and things you lose. I mean, there's trade-offs. You don't have actual physical energy around you in that regard, but you can get, if you're normally in a show and people are sitting there and they're thinking, boy, I wish I could hear blah 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 of a song, and they'll tell you later on, hey, wish you had played da 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 da, and you're like, yeah, I wish I had known I could have played it. And now you know, because they're like telling you as you're playing, you're trying to play another song and they're going, hey, I want to hear da da da, but it's, there, it's like, those movies where sometimes there'll be thought bubbles suddenly, and it's funny and you can see what everybody's thinking. It's kind of like that, so you don't have the bodies. It's kind of disembodied, but there's other parts of the interaction, which is, as a live performer, that's mostly what it's about, especially in this medium, maybe in any medium, but especially in this one. It's a it's a social thing, really. And so a lot of that, what would feel like a void is I think uh, replaced, recast, maybe, as in that way.
Yeah, I've thought about I've tried to imagine. It's almost impossible to really imagine, but going through this in crazy time in general, with everything going on, and not having any social media outreach. So if you were just there with your family and didn't have that, and then also didn't have the option to play, I wonder where that would put like a live performer in their head. It would be even harder to cope, I would think.
I would think so. Um, it I so I have this radio station, internet radio station, Radio Free Bernstein, and it's 24/7, and I've poured a lot of thought and energy into it in the last 4 years since it went live, and I can cut in live anytime, and I do. But since doing these, like the online Facebook live shows, since doing those, and you have the immediate feedback,
Hmm.
um, just doing those live radio, it's strange. It's like really hurling it into the void.
It's like you were almost ahead of your time a little bit, because now, like, I feel like you're right. You have no response back, but now, I mean, I would assume that even that program's probably getting more traffic than everyone's kind of reaching out to fill out their need for music and new.
Yes and no. I mean, the fact is, you can hear pretty much anybody you ever want to hear on a semi-daily basis in real time and watch them. So I don't know that people are necessarily right now going, I wonder what I can just listen to on an audio format.
Old school.
It's like, why? It's like, okay, do you want to watch? There's a Beatles reunion. John and George came back from the dead, and they're all in a room, and they're gonna jam for an hour. Do you want to watch them, or do you want to just listen to them? Hmm.
Yeah, that's a crossroad right there. Well,
But
the
one
current
day people will start traveling again, and then everybody will listen.
exactly. Well, I mean, in some states, apparently they've already cured COVID because they don't care. But that's another
Yeah.
topic, another story. But stepping away from the current times for a moment, hopefully we're going to introduce some new folks to Dan Bern, and also the folks that already are fans of yours and know you and your music. Hopefully we can get some information and teach them some more about you. But I want to start kind of where it all started for you. I believe you grew up in Iowa. Is that correct?
Correct.
So growing up in Iowa, what was your childhood like there, and at what point did music enter your life early on as a childhood? And I'm just kind of curious because also from the Midwest. I'm from Missouri, so I can relate to that kind of small classroom, not
Yeah.
diversified group of people you're probably hanging out with. So I'd love to hear your kind of tale of growing up and how that affected you.
Well, it was very strange, I think. Um, I mean, it didn't feel strange. It never, you never feel strange because it's just what you know. But yeah, my parents had recently immigrated, and my dad was a classical pianist and composer and college professor of it. And so we were in a small town in Iowa. They had, my dad had been, well, both my parents were refugees, I guess. I guess so. My mom went on the Kinder transport, one of the last ones from Germany to England in 1939. And the Kristallnacht kind of was a blessing in disguise for them because it finally pushed them to leaving. Whereas up until then, there's always this thought, well, how bad can it get? It's got to get better. It can't get worse. Things will come around. And then they took him in, even though he was a lawyer, they took him in and arrested him, and he was held for a while. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, had been pushing for years, and he was always, because he was helping others get out. So he was like, well, I need to help, da 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 da. And then finally, when that happened, they left. And my dad left Lithuania in 1939 also. But other than one brother of his, well, his brother and his sister were partisans in the forest fighting. His brother made it through. His sister was betrayed one night and fell into the enemy hands. And then the parents and two youngest sons were part of where they took them all out to the edge of town and shot him one day.
Wow.
Yeah. So there they were, and chance meeting in Israel where my dad had made it to. He'd made it to Palestine, and then it became Israel a little bit later. And then they met, and then they couldn't stay in England, so they went to America. And then my dad got a job in this small town in Iowa where I grew up, trying to make sense of everything. So I just heard classical music, piano music, night and day for my first few years. And then the Beatles went on Ed Sullivan, and so I just listened to the Beatles for years after that. And then some guy, older guy who'd been through the 60s, who his wife worked with my mom at the college. He turned me on one night to Dylan, Phil Oakes, Woody Guthrie, Bobby Seale, pretty much overnight. So I traded in the cello I had sawed on really badly and alone for years.
So
The
cello
next,
was your first actual.
yeah, because you had to play something. I was 6. It was time. But I wanted to play the cello because everybody else in my family played the piano. I mean, my dad 8 hours a day, but my sister, that was her instrument she was learning. My mom played if everybody else let it alone for a second. And I was like, well, there's no room on the piano in this house. Some guy came with me and played the cello with my dad one night, Paul Olewski, and they played. And I thought, well, now that's a cool one. Haven't seen that before. I think I'll play the cello. So I started on the cello, and for about 4 months it was really cool, But there was nobody to play with. There's no orchestra. There's nothing. I was just sawing alone on the cello with my screen window open, hearing my friends play ball, which is what I wanted to do. But I saw it on the cello badly for 6, 8 years. And then, well, I think I finally stopped. I finally got the courage up to tell my parents that I just didn't want to play the cello anymore. Which at that point was tantamount to, I don't want to play any form of music anymore. You know? I mean, it felt like that much of it. It's like music's not going to be in my life. And then dude plays all that stuff for me. Because up till then, the Beatles, as much as I loved and loved them, they were a group. You know, they were four. I was sitting there, on my own in my room. And, but when I heard those guys, it was like, oh, you can do this by yourself. And it sounds really good. And they're singing about stuff. And so, immediately, then I traded in the cello, got a guitar, and started the work of making up songs about stuff and singing them. And I guess in one way or another, I've been doing that ever since.
So you were immediately starting to create your own music, like writing and.
I think so, because I had been singing songs and making up songs for years. They had just never been like codified into, like, with an instrument. I had a whole set list, like 13 songs me and my friend Steve made up on the way to school and back. And then we would just sing. Some of them would be like 3 seconds long. Some would be longer. But they were like, we would just, you're just singing to the air. And when you make the leap from that to, it's like when yeah. My favorite thing when I do songwriting workshops sometimes is to, it's fine when people come and they're already good, and that's cool, and you just kind of turn them loose and whatnot. But when you can get somebody to go from, I've never written a song, or I didn't think I wrote songs, to, like, that leap, that's huge. That's a really vast leap. So I guess that was mine, doing when that was happening.
And then, so at this point, are you in high school yet, or is this still pretty young?
This was early high school, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
cool.
so I went through all of, I even in like 8th grade, we had this set of songs we would sing. Just some were just to annoy people. We had this one. This one was D-um, and it was literally this. D-um, D-um. So typically I would be on one side of the room, of a classroom. Maybe it was like something sort of loose, like maybe first aid, and everybody's doing different things, And maybe Steve's way over there, and we start doing D-um, but real soft. So it's just like this. And the teacher, Mrs. Miner, she would flip out, because she would hear this thing, but she didn't know what it was. So it was actually kind of subversive. And so, yeah.
So aside from those amazing performances in your classroom from Miss Minor, at what point did you have the courage to actually have a song or a couple songs and be able to share them for people in a semi-formal scenario, or was it always kind of like just at school, after school, or was there a scene in Iowa where you got to share songs with the people, and was there an open mic night? I don't know.
That wasn't probably till a little bit later. Although there was this cool, I think my first, there's like the coffee house at college, right? And they had open mics, and then I got some shows there. And those are probably my first shows. I would get so nervous before each one. Sometimes I would actually be sick. And there wasn't a single one where I didn't berate myself beforehand and ask myself why I ever got myself into this. and promise myself that this would be the last time. Don't ever do this to yourself again, okay? Remember? But then there's one in Dubuque, Iowa, that wasn't affiliated with any school or anything. And there was this presenter, and I don't even remember how I got my stuff to her or whatever. But she had me in her little series one Sunday, you know? And that felt like a big deal.
So is that kind of, do you think maybe the little churn in the wheel going like, maybe I do like doing this, and that was the
Actually, honestly, I think it was my bar mitzvah.
oh, what happened at the bar mitzvah?
Well, cause you work for a year or whatever. I think you're supposed to work for 3, but we were in the little town. We had to drive in, so I did 1. I did the crash course. And you working all this stuff up. You got your little speech. You got your Haftorah portion. You got this. You got that. You're singing the stuff. And then you do it. And it's like a big performance. It's a big performance. And then it's over. And you get some cool stuff, but it's like, I think there was a part of me that wanted the tour. I wanted t-shirts, and have and repeat the show in Minneapolis and go up to Milwaukee, maybe Madison, Chicago, big Chicago, and everywhere you'd go, you'd have calluses in your cheeks.
That's awesome. So bar mitzvah happened, and you're like, I gotta hit the road.
Well, I think there was something that was unfulfilled. That was like, well, what? Don't we keep doing this? What? Why do we stop now? So I think when I, cottoned on to the fact that you could just do a series of these, this probably seemed like a good thing to do. Also there was, when I was in 3rd grade, me and Dan Welch were sort of the class clowns. And we had a pretty cool, loose 3rd grade anyway. They took 1/2 of one 3rd grade class and 1/2 of one 2nd grade class for the last half of our 3rd grade. Threw us all together. And we did a lot of field trips. It was the 60s, and they were experimenting. Anyway, so she would put me and Dan Welch up in front of the class for the last 5 minutes every day before lunch. It was entertainment hour. We would just showboat for 5 minutes. So I think getting to do that, honestly, that probably set me up for a lot of stuff too. It's it is true, the people that allow you to do things when you're a kid or that really does make some differences.
I totally agree, and it's we have evidence sitting right in front of us, both of us. I got some decent feedback when I was a kid as well, and here we are in front of people and doing what we do, cutting our own path, I call it.
Where in Missouri were you, Casey?
I was born in a town called Columbia, Missouri, right in the middle. Oh
God, yeah.
But my actual hometown was about 10 minutes from there, a little town called Ashland, Missouri. My parents are still there, and it was a class of 73 people, I think, in my high school class. So,
yeah, that's like mine.
Yeah, and so not many folks moved far away, and without returning soon after. And I went to San Francisco in '05 and didn't turn back. So yeah, anyway. So I
Were you,
like.
were
Yeah.
you with the college at all?
I
University?
didn't go. I didn't go to the University of Missouri, but I did go to Columbia College. But I dropped out my senior year to move to San Francisco. So what are you gonna do? I think this would be a great time to give us a song if you're down for it.
Sure. Um,
And you're listening to Dan Bern. If you're just joining us, thank you guys all so much for. Hey there,
well, there's a new one I made up. Well, I kind of, it was an older one, and then I remade it, which I gotta tell you is a lot more work than just writing another just writing another song. It's so much easier to just write another song than to take something existing and, you know, revivify it. You know what I mean? It's harder to revise and edit and make something new again than it is to just anyway. Up my hand, said I solemnly swear one January day, and just like that I was a president of the USA. And just like that I'm the president of the USA. There's limos, bands, and speeches, and the parties to go to. I said, oh, that's gonna have to wait. There's so much to do. Them parties can wait. We got some work to do. Day one, I tell the police, lay down your guns. You're here to help the post office get their mailing done. Help old ladies cross the street, catch a kitten from a tree. Maybe drop by the school sometime and show them how to plant a tree. Day two, I offer statehood to Cuba and Mexico. Cuba 1 state, Mexico 6, we'll see how it goes. No more border guards, human smuggling, take care of our own neighborhood. And a few more stars and some green in the flag looks pretty good. Hey, and Israel and Palestine, they follow our lead, just combine and then become Israel Stein, hooray. And that's my second day. Third day I tell Detroit, start making cars that don't use gas. Everybody gets a big rebate and they start to selling fast. No burning up the fresh air, making the homeland boil. And there's good jobs in the hemp fields if your job was drilling oil. Fourth day, the Army's all or none, so we're all on the straight and narrow. We all tie knots and walk through muds, pitch tents, hit a bow and arrow. Around the world we bring the soldiers home with whatever they can carry, unless they want to stay on and help build schools, bridges, and libraries. Fifth day, health care will apply now to everyone. If you get sick, see a doctor. That's how my government's run. Judges will be chosen by 6th grade teachers for a dime. And all persons are created equal, in case you missed that one the first time. Yes, and that's my first 5 working days, the first good working week. After that we need a break to freshen up and take a leak. We gotta just chill and take a breath, play ball and have some fun. We're gonna have some new holidays, let's run them down one by one. Monday is National Nude Day, everyone disrobes. Tuesday's National Hemp Day, plant a seed or just get stoned. Wednesday's National Paint Something Day, Thursday no screens. Friday's tennis or ping pong or frisbee or soccer or just eat greens. Saturday mess up an area, not have to clean it up day with no repercussions. Sunday, do it all, nude stone, draw someone, no screens, croquet, mess up an area, not have to clean it up. Enjoy, just be ready for work on Monday. My cabinet, it'll probably start off with John McEnroe. Venus and Serena, when we play, they gotta kinda let me win, you know. Whoopi Goldberg, Ani DeFranco, LeBron, Sarah Silverman, Martin Sheen, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Tom Hanks, Bruce Springsteen, Alicia Garcia, James Blake, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Gladwell, Flea, Oscar De La Hoya, Bill Simmons, AOC, and before we bail out the bankers, we'll first seek to the farmers, and the head of any department she wants goes to Michelle Obama. I raise up money, set a solemnly swear one January day, and just like that I was the president of the USA. Just like that I'm the president of the USA.
Here's something you haven't heard probably in a little bit. Doesn't that feel good?
Oh, I hear it all the time, but it's me doing it.
It's amazing how that song just lines up almost the same as the current administration. It's like a mirrored song. It's pretty amazing. If you're just joining us, this is Dan Bern. He's out in the Santa Cruz, California area, which he recently moved to, which is pretty cool. We'll talk maybe about that a little bit. But great singer-songwriter, and I'm Casey Turner. I'm a concert promoter based in San Francisco, although I'm in Salt Lake City today conducting this fine conversation. But if you are just joining us, please let us know where you're watching from and share this and help us get as many people watching as possible. And do visit the pinned comment below and check out danbern.com so you can check out his merchandise and all the great things he does and you can do. And also you can tip this podcast and help out what I'm doing. So, yeah, thank you all so much for being here. As he's filling up his teacup there, just want to remind you that the next one of these is next Thursday, June 18th, with Matt the Electrician, songwriter from Austin, Texas. And that'll be my last one for a little while. I'm going to take a little break through the summer, and but we'll do some more hopefully this fall, unless we can have concerts again. Then I probably won't do as many of these. But I've done about 14 others. So if you go on YouTube and look up Casey Turner Presents Talk to Me, you'll find all of them, and you can relive the magic from all these fun interviews and conversations I've had with some of my favorite songwriters that I'm lucky to call friends. It really is great that I can call you up and say, hey, can we do this? And you're like, sure. So thank you so much for being part of this and keeping myself sane a little bit, and hopefully the folks watching. It's just nice to put something on the calendar that we're not going to cancel. You know, that felt so good.
Yeah, right.
So, kind of picking back up where we left off here, once you started performing, were you also like working a job? I mean, or did you just dive right into street busking? Or what was your kind of slow transition into saying, you know what, I'm going to do this?
My first summer out of college, I went to Chicago and I landed a job singing on the street, believe it or not. They were arresting street buskers and hiring street buskers at the same time. So I was one of the ones that they were, given a little dough to go out on the street and sing. Sometimes we'd go to the zoo. Sometimes two or three of us would hang out together and we'd go to the zoo and just make up songs about everybody that went by, and every little kid that would come by, you'd start singing like as if you were him, or her. So that was a great entry into, but no, I've worked a whole bunch of different jobs. A lot of very strange jobs, too. Well, a lot of temporary office jobs where you'd come in for a day or 2 days or a week or even 3 months at the most. And, even assembly line stuff once in a while. But I could type really fast at a time when, now everybody types like a mad maniac. Yeah? But at the time, Anyway, so I did a lot of that. I did this. One of my strangest jobs was. Well, there are a lot of strange ones. One time I worked for this restaurant, this Italian restaurant, and the guy somehow decided that because I was creative in this one way, that I was just going to be creative in all ways. So he hired me to be like he called it the promotional administrator of his restaurant. That was my title, which mainly meant that I went in and got a free meal once in a while and talked to my friends on the phone. Taught tennis for a long while. That was its own thing.
Was there like a parallel kind of like, because I mean, I know you are into sports quite a bit, especially tennis. When you were learning music as a child, was there at some point, I assume school probably brought tennis to your I don't know for sure, but was there a parallel between you playing and writing songs all the time and just out there hitting the ball?
Uh, yeah, probably. It was real solitary for a long while. Well, it was just me and my couple friends. Me and Jim, me and Steve. They were my tennis guys. Terry Boron. But then, all at once, they threw some. They decided had extra cement probably, and they like laid down some courts out there in the cornfields by the track. And they didn't even paint them green. They're just blacktop and yellow lines that were just paint. So if the ball hit it, if the ball hit the line, it would just skid. And then at the same time, so I was the best among my little group of friends, Steve, Jim, Boron. I could beat all those guys. But then suddenly, at the same moment that they built us some courts and announced that there might be a team, this was unheard of. A tennis team? This was legit, I might get a leather jacket out of this deal. And so at that same moment, Eric moves in. And Eric is like, he's immediately like, he's still my best friend from back home. It's like, he played tennis and he was a lefty and he was better than me. And he was cooler than everybody. And he didn't care. And he wasn't very happy that he had to move here. And so, he didn't really care about anybody. And that was just when I was diving into my Oaks, Dylan, Woody, Bobby Seale, I was getting my attitude on. So, so I played on, so we had teams. the next couple 3 years. The next 3 years we had teams, and then I went to college and I kept on the team, and then I started teaching at these camps. And then at some point when I was out in California, when I had left Chicago, and I was like, I had just answered a call. They wanted people. It was just some like, here's a job. All you have to do is talk on the phone. The money's, because I had been working at this place when I first moved to LA. You'd put a pair of headphones on, and in this ear you would have KNX 1070, all news all the time. And in this year, you would have KFWB 980, all news all the time. So you would have both all news stations going simultaneously, 8 hours at a time, and you would write down in brief every product that was ever mentioned on any of these things. And then these other guys would come in like vultures and take these, and they'd be recording all this stuff 24 hours a day, and then we would note when it happened in two different ones. Anyway, so I was doing that, which will drive you mad after a while, completely mad. And so I saw this other ad, so I answered this ad, and I went there, and they said, I thought in my mind it was like, it's like being an actor. It's like they want voice people. So then you go, and it was like, okay, the gig is you have to impersonate a physician on the phone, call hospitals, and try to sell the nurses that answer these home chlamydia tests. That was the gig. So I went there, and I got the gig. This was a Friday. I got the gig. They said, come in on Monday. And so I was like, oh, well, I got this gig. Oh, I got to do this. So then I passed these tennis courts. It was in, up in the valley, Encino, that area, Woodland Hills. And there's this big sign on the side of the courts with a big phone number, tennis lessons. So I'm like, I call them up, and I'm like, hey, I've been doing this, I've taught a lot of tennis. Can I join your outfit? They were affiliated with Braden, Vic Braden. Remember Vic Braden? You know that guy? Funny little guy.
I don't know who that is.
He was like a funny little guy, and he was like an impresario of tennis back in the day. And like he had all these videos, and like he would teach you tennis, and he was funny, and he would do like the circuit. He would go around, and anyway, they were affiliated with him. I think they just bought the name.
I'm picturing like Joe Pesci in my head for some reason.
Right. It's that guy. But I think they just paid for the name. I don't think he ever had anything to do with this place. But it looked legit.
I really appreciate that. Really, none of your jobs have been like normal kind of box fitting jobs. It's always been this kind of like to fit your personality.
Well, here's the thing. I purposely, I think, very almost systematically, because I was always doing music. I was writing songs while I was giving lessons. Mm-hmm. That's all I ever cared about. So I think intentionally, almost all my jobs intentionally had nothing to do with anything that would interfere. It's not like I was having to write something at any of these jobs. I didn't have to engage creatively in that way. I was very briefly, I almost crashed into Los Angeles journalism as the new Mike Royko. I was almost the new Mike Royko of LA journalism. I was one of the things I would write for little journals, or I would submit stuff. I did a column. I did columns sometimes. So I did one in Chicago, and then I got to LA, and so I was new, and I was maybe hadn't started even teaching tennis yet. I was, I had the 2 headphone thing on, and so I started writing these little features for the downtown news, and they kind of let me. Sometimes they tell me, show up at such and such, and you're going to write about power dressing. So I would go there, and they'd put me in these clothes, or I would do some restaurant reviews. I wrote one thing about the toy district. I wrote this long thing about the toy district, downtown LA. This is all like downtown LA. And then one day the editor guy calls me and he's kind of pissed. He says, well, the LA Times called and they want to talk to you. And he was like, he didn't like the LA Times. But come on, it's the LA Times. So they said, yeah, we saw your toy piece. It's good. Maybe you want to write a up-ed piece for us. Write a something about they gave me something. Metro Rail was about to do like tickets on the honor system. So write about that. So I wrote about that. And they were like, it's great. So they printed it. Then they said, do another one. Do anything you want. So I recycled one I had done in Chicago, all about how ball players have to see their box scores every day in the paper. For every little error, every little flub they make, it's there in print the next day. I was like, man, what if everybody had that? Like in your office, or just all these little errors, misspelled words, 7, stuff like that. It's like, give these guys a break. Come on. Anyway, so I basically recycled it without changing anything. Gave it to them. They were like, this is great! They printed it. At that point, the guy calls me in. He's like, not messing around. He's like, I want to see this kid face to face. And I was like, and we had a little chat, nice chat. Talked about the Midwest. He knew about the 3I League, which is really going back, baseball. It's like before the Midwest League. I didn't know anything about it, but I pretended I did. And he's basically like, you're 2 for 2, kid. This is incredible. If you keep this up, you're going to have an office up here. And I'm going to have to move down the hall. So anyway, so I was really hot. And I answered one too quickly, or I wrote the next one too fast, and they were like, nearly, almost, can't wait to see the next one. And I quickly wrote myself out of them even returning a phone call. But yeah, if that had happened, I might have said, heck with the guitar. I'm the new Mike Royko. Other than that, they were all some stuff that I wasn't gonna, bring home with me.
So when we get to the point of you putting out your first record, have we overlapped that yet with these jobs, or did that come later on, like with the Dog Boy Van?
That came later.
And self-titled.
That came only because I finally gave that all up and said, this is what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to wait for some perceived gatekeepers to anoint me and say, you get to do this now. Mm-hmm. But, so I was doing all that stuff, and then I met Chris and Amanda. Chris Chandler and Amanda Stark, and they were performing as Stark Raving Chandler. And it was this wild mix of his wild rantings and her singing, weaving in and out of old folk songs, It was really cool, and they were much harder edged than, everything else at Folk Alliance that year. And so I gave up the apartment, sold the car, bought a van instead. My friend Jake Kasdan, the guy who made Walk Hard and the guy who made Zero Effect and trillion TV shows, his folks sold me their old van. So outfitted to that with like a little a thing in the back made out of wood, a rack, I guess. So I'd sleep on top, put all my stuff underneath. Ingenious. I drove some version of that for a long time. But it wasn't until I did that and gave up all the other stuff that almost immediately things happened. Back in LA where I had been spending all that time trying to make things happen. As soon as I left and said I don't care about that, I'm just going to do what I want to do, then suddenly, with the help of Margulies, who steered me to these guys at the work group, Jeff and Jordan, Jeff Aroff, Jordan Harris. But I think then I was interesting because I wasn't hanging around trying to get a record deal. I was just already doing this thing, and so there was something to sort of want to be associated with, I guess. For a little while.
And it is like that right time kind of thing. You know, I've talked to a bunch of folks through this interview process, and my buddy Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket being one, because it was a little earlier on in the 90s when he was in Southern California, but it's like there was that time when if you were out there playing, you know, people were wanting to sign deals, whether they're small or big deals, and it was just like a scene kind of happening there. Did you kind of experience that a little bit accidentally? Because you weren't like, it doesn't sound like you were like driving to run out there and do it. You had someone kind of cheerleading for you, but you were still writing all these songs and performing. Like compared to like if you were trying to do something like that today, it's a totally different, I think, approach, right? I mean, in the mid '90s compared to how folks have to make things happen now.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
totally different.
Totally different. I mean, now, you can now record an album in a day and release it that night.
Which you've kind of done a little bit during this quarantine, which we're going to talk about in a second. But
yeah,
it is pretty amazing.
You can do that. You can have your own. You don't have to wait for somebody to interview you. Mm-hmm. You can have your own TV show. You can have your own. I mean, you know, and that's what people do.
And also, like, I mean, being from the Midwest, I think you can relate to this. The things I've seen happen in California, even in more modern time, like, you know, the last 10 years, that stuff just doesn't happen in central Missouri or central Iowa as much, you know? So you being in the Los Angeles area at that time was probably a great move for art, you know?
I mean, I wasn't even the best songwriter on my block for a bunch of years in LA.
What I love about your first release is that track number 1 is Jerusalem. And, like, I mean, when you wrote that song and put that on the record, did you ever think that, you'd be probably going to play that almost every show you played today? Because it's kind of the Dan Bern anthem, I feel like, you know. It was my intro to you that year at Folk Alliance, you know. You played it at your official showcase, and you know, for all I knew at the time, I was like, oh, he just wrote this. I wasn't familiar with all your work, and it was the hook for me that got me addicted to try the rest of the Dan Bern stash. But I mean, did you ever think that that song would just be as important to the audience today as it would have been, as it was 20 years ago?
I don't know. I mean, when I wrote it, I was imagining what I was looking at this big. I was in Jerusalem. And so I was looking at this huge chasm. Like, here's this almost like a cliff, right? Here's one bit of land, and then there's this almost a Grand Canyon like opening, but where people could gather. And I imagined walking out there and singing one song. I was like, well, what would that be? I think I so it was it wasn't it was slightly conscious, I think, in that, like, well, what would if I and then next time I had sort of a I think maybe that evening or the next evening I had to myself. So I don't know. I guess I guess it was useful in that way.
Well, I mean, so since that record, I was trying to count using all the various sources, but I think you've put out a roughly 22 albums since then, which is definitely, I think the word prolific might be an understatement. But the one that you have put out in that group of 22 plus records is Quarantine Me, which was written, recorded, and released since March, I think, whenever we went into the sit in place.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you're able to put all that together because you've proven that you can do this stuff over and over again. But it still like is incredibly impressive, and the fact that it's so good, I love it. I listened to it again yesterday, preparing for this interview, and it just sounds really great. And the songs are just on the nose and really cover a lot what's going on and what has been going on in with this. Did you when this lockdown happened? Did you just know you were like, or did you just start writing songs and they just all had the same theme? You realized, well, I should put this out. This is the time, or what?
Well,
How would
I,
that work?
I was. That's when I started to do my live shows, and so every time I would do one or two of these would pop out. Um, if I hadn't done those shows, I don't know that I would have written all those. Maybe I would have written one or two. But I find that when I'm touring, I just write more. 'Cause you just I don't know. It's just the natural thing to do. I think it's like, well, uh, if you're playing a set and you're playing a set of old songs, you have one new song that can just put life into your whole set. So maybe it was that. But anyways, they I think a couple people said, well, how can we get these? We want to hear these. It's like, well, if you want to hear them, then you can hear them in this way. Um, I did one album all in a weekend back in January. I was at the 30A. Have you been to 30A?
I've never been to it. I've always wanted to go, but I'm definitely familiar with it.
Um, so I was done with that, and I had a couple days extra. And right then, this guy, hashtag 800cc guy, it's a cryptocurrency community that he's kind of I don't know. I don't even quite understand it all myself. In fact, I don't understand it at all. But he challenged me to write an album about this community and this the currency and the whole culture around it, I guess. Or he wasn't even that specific. And I had a couple extra days, so I learned as much as I could as fast as I could, and I wrote 6 songs because I said, well, how about an EP? And he was like, okay, an EP. And so I wrote 6 songs, recorded them, and they were on Bandcamp before I left. So that was the first time I actually did something that quick and released it and blah. So it didn't seem that crazy to do that one. And then I did the baseball one like the following week, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, for those of you that don't know, he already released a record this year called Rivalry, and then just last year he released Regent Street, which is another great record. I always wonder.
I mean,
and
that's the real record I've done
That's
of late.
right.
Everything else is like, this week's pamphlet.
You're right, because Regent Street went into the studio with band, and it's a totally different production, I guess, and mindset than.
But you never know, I guess. You never know. I mean, we still listen to Woody's Dust Bowl ballads.
I think about that with every like Hank Williams record or Carter Family record. They put a lot of work into them, obviously, but I mean, the quality of Quarantine Me is better than we talk about like studio quality of what we consider,
Right.
What's good for the ears or whatever. But really, all you need is just a good song at the end of the day. And I've always told artists this who can't afford to do a big thing, or they just don't put anything out because they want to wait till they can do a big thing. I'm like, if your song is good, you got to get it to people's ears. I think that's just my opinion. But actually, this is kind of fun talking about going back to, you said when you saw the Beatles and they were a group and you didn't think that was maybe obtainable. And you do primarily do solo, but you do tour with a group sometimes. And I never knew this, but you, I don't know if you still coin it, but you coined it the International Jewish Banking Conspiracy.
Right.
I love that. So it's just like a revolving group of members, I assume, right? Depending on where you are in the country. And how did that come together?
That band is really there's really a core of that band. I mean, that was a real solid unit that remains. We did some shows last fall for the first time in a very long time, but it was just like picking up an old boot. That's Will Massasak on the keyboards, and Eben Grace plays guitar. Brian Shea bass, and Jake Coffin on the drums.
Yeah, I've never got to catch that band live, but I bet it would be a lot of fun to see you with that group.
Yeah, I mean, that was... Yeah.
I think this is a good point to give us another tune if you're down for that.
Sure.
And for those of you guys just joining us, my guest today is Dan Bern, and you're watching Casey Turner Presents Talk to Me. Take it away, Dan.
Maybe it's another fresh one. Is that gonna be alright, you think? Is that too loud on the guitar? Is that good?
Sounds great.
Okay. One night in Minneapolis on the 25th of May, in a time of upheaval, in a time of plague, in a time of doubt and trouble, when you're afraid of where you breathe, doctors, nurses dying, you're needing something to believe. A man was taken to the ground, I see the picture still, for the crime of buying cigarettes with a fake $20 bill. And to his neck in the 8 minutes 46, I kid you not, he pleaded, cried, I can't breathe, and to his dead ma he called out, George Floyd, you did not die in vain. Good people are rising up in your name. The pictures spread like fire, and the images they burn across the land like a volcano. But what lesson could be learned? To some business like usual, where dark skin is a crime, in a country and society where it happens all the time. But somehow this time different, 'cause there's more of the same. At a time when help was needed, just more nonsense and more shame. And the world took notice, the world took to the streets. The world echoed, I can't breathe, the world rose to its feet. George Floyd, George Floyd, he did not die in vain. Good people rising up in your name. And with masks to our faces, 'cause the plague it didn't stop, we rose up with fury against the violence and the cops. And the call rang out for justice across the stricken land. But the fascists called for more blood, fascists tipped their hand. But even with the armies of the fascists cracking heads, something real was growing through the concrete and lead. He did not ask for martyrdom, can't get back what they stole. But there ain't no weapon ever made to rob you of your soul. George Floyd, George Floyd, he did not die in vain. Good people rising up in your name. George Floyd, George Floyd, he did not die in vain. Around the world, folks rising up in your name.
Wow, man, way to! I mean, that's going to be a song it's a marker in history. Really beautiful tribute. Thank you for writing that.
Yeah, you know, sometimes, yeah, it's like, well, it if it's something that, in fact, is a marker, you know, and is a moment, a moment where things change the way we might envision. Well, I wanted to make a little marker of that.
In your career, I mean, you've experienced lots of, I believe, markers relative to the all relative, you know, and you know what we're going through now. I mean, obviously, I don't think any of us can say we can compare it to anything, but as a songwriter and artist, like, what responsibility do you think artists have to step up and lend their voice, or is it okay for artists to remain quiet if they don't feel comfortable going there? What's
I
your
think
view
it's
on
always
that?
personal choice, you know. I mean, I'm always encouraging people to want to use your vehicle to say something. I mean, that, I think that's what all the stuff I was inspiring to me had in common, you know. I mean, is it propaganda? I don't know. Not really. I think propaganda makes you feel kind of dirty, kind of lousy. Because, you know, it's different than when you're like just for something that comes from I don't know, man. Say something.
No, that I'm with you. I mean, as a father, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are having probably a hard time discussing this with their kids, and um, you're so great at putting these thoughts and into a song and talking about stuff like this is not easy. But I can only imagine as a father explaining to a young child, trying to grasp just a just a little bit of how to process this as a young mind. Do you have any advice that you give your
um,
child?
I don't give out advice too much. We all struggle. Uh, I think a lot of times it is probably with her and me. A lot of it is through song, probably. Honestly, I'm probably guilty of indulging too much fantasy at times. We have our worlds. They're creative worlds. They're worlds of story, a lot of it, and character, and you know. So we talk about stuff some, but you know, as I'm thinking about it, probably a lot of it is in song too.
It's a reminder, I think, to everyone. I mean, how important music is, and there's a message, that gets conveyed and carried, and it's happened throughout our history. And so, yeah, thank you for continuing that torch of bringing a song to help us process through times like this and other times and different scenarios and different subject matter too. So appreciate people like you
Well,
create
what I
the
find
community.
out, what I discover anew, is that it's way as important, probably more important, to do it as it is to receive it and hear it. And like anything, that it's a real nice bargain from this end of things, if anybody wants to hear it, because yeah, it definitely allows the release of things from this end.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Dan, for being here. And if you guys are just joining us, this is Dan Bern. He's in Santa Cruz, California. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're gonna do a couple fan questions that I've got gathered here, if that's cool with you, and then maybe we'll end with the song. Sound good?
Sounds great. Can I
It's
just
been a
grab some more to drink
Yeah.
here? All right.
Go grab some more water there, whatever's in the cup. It's the mystery cup.
It is.
Again, our next Talk to Me episode is going to be next Thursday, June 18th, with Matt the Electrician from Austin, Texas. And if you are, like I said, just joining us, I'm Casey Turner. I'm a concert promoter based in San Francisco, California. And this whole podcast, conversation, whatever you want to call it, is just of me talking to a bunch of my musician friends, folks that I've had the honor to present on my intimate stages in the San Francisco Bay Area over the years. If you go to YouTube, you can type in Casey Turner Presents, Talk to Me, and see. I think I've done 13, 14, or 15. I don't know for sure how many episodes we've got up there. Everyone from Steve Poltz to Robbie Folks to Megan Slinker to John Craigie to Dan Byrne. So go check them out and relive all the magical moments we've shared on Zoom. Thank you, Zoom, I guess. I actually don't. I'm not thinking Zoom. I'm paying for this. Okay. I don't know. You left me hanging there. I was just blabbing. Okay. Okay. We got some fan questions, and we'll get through these here, and we'll play a nice song. So this first one's a nice thick one here. Alan Chitlick. I believe I said his name right. Alan Chitlick. He says, first of all, he makes a statement. He says, I think Dan Byrne is one of the most easygoing, laid back, mellowest guys ever. But from a professional standpoint, he's about as type A person as you can imagine. He's prolific in creating music, and it wears me out just thinking about how productive he is. So his question to you, Dan, is do you agree with those characterizations? That's his first question.
Well, I'm considering the first one. Um, well, I think I'm laid back about certain things that other people are not laid back about. I think within my own experience, myself, I think I'm I'm a lot more anxious than might appear. As far as the second, sometimes I feel that way, and sometimes a lot of time I just feel like I'm trying to get four things done at once, and I don't know which one to start with. Uh, Honestly, I think I'm pretty anxious unless I'm actually actively engaged in something. You know, it might be a game. For hiking, I might need to play a game where you can you have to hit that overhanging branch with a rock before you can continue on. You know, stuff like that is gonna keep me a lot more. Uh, so yeah, I suppose maybe I am that way only because I need to be engaged and focused. Otherwise, I I don't quite know what to do with myself.
I think
I'm
you already
not.
answered
It's
his.
not great.
Yeah.
It's not a great thing as I'm talking about it. I'd like to say, yeah, I'm a Zen master, man. I am chill as the day is long. But what about you?
Oh, I'm
You
anxious.
seem to be to me pretty easy about things.
I sometimes I am, but when it comes to like this, I take it really seriously. Like just not. I mean, not
Right.
just the podcast, but like music and stuff. So I'm pretty anxious because I tend to micromanage a lot. I trust people to help carry the job, but like there's so many times the littlest details get
Yeah.
overlooked, and that bugs the hell out of me. It's almost like over compulsive for sure, and
How are
that's
you with
definitely anxious.
delegating?
Better than I used to be, and I'm learning a lot. My one of my best friends, his name's Dean Biersch, and he owns Hot Monk Tavern, which is a place I book at and I do a lot of shows at. And he's been an entrepreneur, as long as I've been alive, and I trust him. And he's such a great guy, and he taught me early on about delegating and how you just have to let a little bit go sometimes. But it's like it's everything you've created. It's your kid, your dream, and when someone spells the marquee wrong, it really just hurts. It hurts.
You've done bigger and bigger shows you've done the Fillmore now a few times.
Just once, we did the Fillmore with Poor Man's Whiskey last November, and that was crazy. But and it's not something it'll probably never happen again. Who knows? Over a long time. But it's not. I don't really I got a lot of joy that night, but leading up to it, it doing smaller intimate shows are feel better for me because I love to see the connection of the audience. And at a 1,100 person venue, you only get to see like the front. It's just great to have like I like intimate listening room shows and
At Hot Monk, do you prefer the indoor show or the outdoor show?
because they've done so much improvement with the venue. I really like the outdoor event because it's a lot of times people have a chance to bring like their teenager or whatever,
Yeah.
and they get to see a great band or artist sing. And just that setup has just gotten so much better. And I've delegated all production needs to this sound company I hired now for it, and that's been a game changer because I used to be the sound guy at those things, and that was just
Oh,
too much. So
yeah.
now I've got
I
this guy
remember.
I trust, and we got a guy who does lights, and so it's the production value of the whole thing's gone up. So I'm really really excited about it more than I ever have been, and that's what it really hurts canceling basically all of it.
Yeah. And the food out there too.
Yeah, and they've got that dialed in, and it's just the flow is better. It took us a while to really get it just honed into a great concert experience for everyone, and last 2 years we really got there, which felt really good. But I love the indoor room too. It's a totally different experience when you're
Yep.
doing a seated show in there, especially. You can get a great listening room in there, and that's important to me. So
The indoor room is like it's like the Ramones. You
yeah,
feel like the Ramones in the indoor, and in the outdoor, it's like you're at a festival.
that's kind of my festival without the stress of like having 2,000 people there. You get to have
Yeah,
about 300, and
but it still feels like it, and the sound is great. Now that they
thanks,
got
man.
you off the sound, especially.
Exactly. Precisely. Hey, this question comes from a good friend of yours that you mentioned earlier in the interview. This question comes from Chris Chandler.
Uh
Chris
oh.
asks,
Uh oh.
What's the most afraid you've ever been out on the open road?
I knew Chris was going to ask a good one. Oh, maybe when they took me to jail.
Okay, let's get that story.
Maybe that one. I think that one probably. Well, I just. Do you want the song or do you want the story?
I mean, you want to save that for the last song? But the go to jail song. We'll close out with that one.
I wasn't gonna, but I could.
Oh, okay. Well, give us whatever you think paints it best, Dan. I'm not going to deny you if you want to.
All right, here's what happened.
Okay.
I'll just tell you. I was just coming from Colorado and I was in Texas and I had some real fresh, real aromatic herb. Big satchel of it. And I had just gotten this 88 Olds Cutlass in New Mexico. And it was missing a taillight. So just when I decided, I was in the little panhandle part of Texas, I thought, wow, I should maybe wrap that in tin foil or something, aluminum foil. So I made a left turn. It was getting dark. It was dark already. I made a left turn into one of those Allsups. You know the Allsups? Those Texas little convenience store gas station things. It's like the Texas 7-Eleven, but, just Texas. Maybe Oklahoma. Anyway. So they stopped me for a taillight before I could go in and get the aluminum foil. So he smells it, of course, and then there's 4 cop cars, and then they take me away. And so I'm there till, this was mid-evening, and then I'm there till the next afternoon.
Which, by this time, you've written 2 albums and put them out already.
I hadn't put them out yet because we didn't have the internet yet.
Oh, right.
I guess everybody else did. I didn't. Anyways, yeah. I wrote one good one about that. Because I was supposed to play with Ani at Carnegie Hall a couple weeks later. And I was thinking, man, I'm going to rot here. They're not going to let me out. I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss da-da-da-da-da. Also, I was kind of lucky because I was in the cell by myself. Meanwhile, everybody around me in these cells around me were, looking at me and, acting crazy. So I was like, oh, man, this is quite a predicament. Quite a predicament. But, the IJBC, they were traveling sort of in tandem, so they finally figured out where I was and came and bailed me out and so on. So
that's a good band. That's a good band to have.
Yeah, I mean, scaredest though. I hadn't thought about that. So I don't know, Chris. I'd love to hear Chris's though.
Thanks, Chris, for bringing up the good memories. We appreciate that.
It's good for that.
I'm
going to trouble you now.
Our friend Bob Hillman asks, did you write the song Tiger Woods to purposely generate an audience reaction? And he's specifically wondering about the Ani DeFranco crowd.
About that crowd?
Well, he was wondering if that maybe specifically was the audience you were trying to get a reaction out of that song. But
I needed something to play for a tour I was going to do opening for her. And I needed something to play, and it was like, people were, all my friends were like, "Oh man, you're in trouble." I think somebody even said, "Just go out there and drop your doors and just cut it off, or cut them off. That's the only way you're gonna." That's, that didn't seem good. So, yeah, I think Bob, I wrote it because I needed something to play for that situation, and that one rolled out.
Friend Josh Windmiller asks, "Are you going to do a second season of 10,000 Crappy Songs?" He really
Yes.
loved the first season.
Yeah, season 2. It's mostly over in Will's court now, and Will is I think he's in New York, but I don't know if he has his stuff because he was just moving from L.A. It was a strange time to move 3 months ago. So I don't know, but yeah, there'll be a season 2. Hopefully soon there'll be a season 3, and there'll be a season 4. That I know. I mean, I don't know. It we don't know anything anymore. I don't know if what I can promise for tomorrow, but all things being well, all things being equal, there'll be 2, 3, and 4 yet. Thank you.
Car Davis wants to know, what was it like to do that train tour through Canada? And was it more of a random audience versus a train full of Dan Bern fans?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a Reach Shimone's gig. I just tagged along, and I got to play in the train cars too. Um, it's great. I love the train in that part of Canada. It's great.
Lisa Hummel wants to know, how did you meet Wavy Gravy? And do you have any good stories from the hog farm in the 90s?
Well, I remember. I don't know when I met him or how I met him. It was around those. Maybe he came to a show at the Freight. Maybe I was introduced to him that way. Uh, I did one of his Seva shows. I don't know. He was just suddenly around, and he was wavy. I remember when he told me when he was 4 years old and he was living in Princeton, New Jersey, and Einstein would come over to take walks with him, with Wavy. He would be like, "I wish to walk with a boy," and they would walk and talk. Einstein and Wavy.
The dude that wears a clown nose hanging out with Einstein. I love it.
Maybe Einstein wore the clown nose. Maybe that's where Wavy got it.
Man, that's good. Our final question here comes from our mutual friend, Mr. Steve Poltz. And Steve would like to know, he says, "Dear Dan, what did you think about in the morning when you first opened your eyes? And do you have a daily routine?"
Wow.
I wasn't sure if he was talking about like this morning when you opened your eyes, or maybe when you were a born baby opening your
I
eyes.
think he meant today.
I think he did.
I think he did. I think I felt like, wow, I actually got a good night's sleep. I slept pretty well. I'm 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 not gonna be dragging. What was the second one?
And do you have a routine?
A routine? No. There's things I like to do every day. Um, I like to do something physical every day. Might be hitting a tennis ball, might be riding a bike, might be playing some hoops, might be swimming in the ocean. So, something of that. I try to eat something that's not bad for me a couple times a day. Other than that, it's just chipping away. I mean, sometimes they'll be like, like today. It was like, I'm going to talk to Casey today. So I knew that was going to happen. And sometimes there's things like that, but I think given to my own devices, no. I wonder if Steve does.
He's developed a hell of a routine. He
He?
does. He does his like. He says he walks 4 to 5 miles a day. He's got a thing where he's cooking and making bread. Um, he's not doing as many live shows as he was at first.
Yeah.
So I think he's sliding into because he's married now. So he's sliding into like, I'm home and I'm a husband. Although I'm sure Sharon's taking good care of him still. I'm sure that I'm sure Steve doesn't do everything, but I think he's falling into a more domesticated scenario than he has ever been accustomed to in his adult life. So,
Wow.
yeah, I'm really happy for him. That's good.
Me too.
Well, dude, it's been really, really, really great having you, and I sincerely appreciate it. I'd love to end things with a song if you got one for us.
I got one for us.
And also, when he's setting up here, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and hanging out with us. Again, this is my little thing called Talk to Me, and you've been listening to Dan Bern, and it's been a lot of fun talking to you. And I definitely learned some new things about Dan that I was unaware of, including him going to jail.
So
That's
did
great.
I learned a lot of new things. Um, yeah, well, thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me on. I've learned a lot about you and doing this, and I don't know, a lot of things. I'm gonna try to do a song that I wrote in Columbia, Missouri one time. I've been speaking later and later in the day. Most days I don't talk till maybe 8 o'clock at night. It keeps me whole, keeps me holy, keeps me well in the mind of even when I'm on the road. Keeps me coming up for air, keeps me airing out some come, keeps me cool. Every place I go is one less place I could call home. Every girl I kiss, well, I just cross her off my list. I don't go far, I just go crazy. I buried all of my old clothes out in some field in West Des Moines. And if you judge me tonight, judge me by the songs I write. It's who I am to you. There's a black tornado, a black tornado spinning around in my body sometimes. Black tornado, a black tornado spinning around in my body sometimes. And everything is changing faster than I can describe. All I really know to do is grab the wheel and drive and look for love, some adventure. And I try not to let my own breathing scare me off the road. There's a tombstone of my father I visit sometimes. There's a fresh grave
Thanks, Dan. I forgot that you wrote that in Columbia. You've told me that before. And thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank everyone again for tuning in to Casey Turner Presents Talk to Me to hang out with Dan Bern and myself. A reminder down below, it's not too late. Go over to danbern.com, buy all of his catalog, support this great songwriter. And if you want, if there's any left over, throw a couple tips towards the podcast. It helps us all out. But it's great to sit down and have a nice chat with you and learn some stuff. Thanks, Dan,
Well,
for
thanks
taking
so
the time
much
to
for
do
having
that.
me on.
Do you have another scheduled live show coming up, or is it kind of fly off the seat of your pants kind of thing?
Right now, I got nothing scheduled.
Okay. Well, if you go to Dan Bern's Facebook page, you can catch one of his live shows coming up soon, and he does them here and there, and they're great. And it's a nice way to just engage with some great live music.
Thanks, man.
All right, I can't wait till this blows over and we get to hang out together at the Hot Monk or anywhere again, and I get to introduce your name into a microphone in front of a room full of people.
And we get to dispose of you in ever more, wild ways.
Yeah, if you are interested in that, folks, if you go to Instagram and look up the hashtag Casey Turner Beatdown, you'll know exactly what he's talking about. I'll leave it up to you to figure that out for yourselves. Dan, have a great day. Take care, and I hope you and your family stay safe and healthy, and I can't wait to see you when we get out of all this.
Thanks, man. Hey, didn't we after that baseball show, I think we came at you with Louisville Sluggers.
That's a really good one. If in that hashtag, you'll see
we reenacted Marichal Roseboro, even, I think, maybe.
Helped me learn how to bat, even. But yeah, you're definitely taking my head off with a baseball bat. And you can see that, folks, on Instagram. Have fun with that. Everyone, please take care, stay safe, and be there for one another. And speak up if you need to speak up. And just take care of everyone. Okay? Everyone, take care. We'll see you all soon.